All right, Biffy, I'm back. Does my microphone sound okay? Okay. I adjusted things a little bit yesterday. I just want to make sure I didn't mess it up. Okie dokie. All right. And you can get hoppy at any point and when you're ready. Why is that? Oh, okay. I was going to say, it's always something, isn't it, Biffy? It's always something. Or a giant scream of anger or something, frustration. Gotcha. I gotcha. I sympathize. The roofers are back. Honestly, they're among our best sponsors anymore, though. Second day in a row, I've tried to get the sheriff to come on. I've had no response. So I don't know what that's all about. Yeah. He's usually pretty amenable to being on the air, but I don't know what the deal was. All righty. I tried to get Mark Curtis to talk about this, but he's busy this morning, so. Yeah. Yeah, he had I don't know what, an accident or something. Like today was physical therapy he had to go to. I don't quite know what happened, but yeah, you're right. He's been out doing a lot of reporting more than just anchoring, more than anchoring. No, he probably likes it, but yeah, I asked, he said no, he couldn't come on today. He's got physical therapy. And remember last time he was at a doctor's office too.
Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Your morning news, weather, and sports wrapped into his own unique perspective. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe and Brad Leonard in the producer's chair. Brought to you in part by Wheeling Hospital.
Yeah, second cup of coffee this morning. I just need a little warm brew. It's good. Drinking out of the official Watchdog Morning Show coffee mug, which we have like dozens of, and we haven't been able to give them away very much because of COVID. One of these days, we got the coffee mugs, we got the pens, Biffy. I got to get these things out in people's hands. It's just COVID's made it hard to do all that kind of stuff, you know?
Yes, it has.
All right, coming up today on the Watchdog Morning Show, a lot for us to kick around this morning. Some numbers may help explain why it's been so hard to get a vaccine appointment in Ohio and Marshall County. Mark Ackerman from the Health Department in Marshall County was with us earlier. 8,000 calls in 1 minute yesterday. People trying to get registered for tomorrow's vaccine clinic. Wheeling Hospital making plans for detours with upcoming phase 2 of the I-70 bridges construction, and the city of Wheeling is urging patience. I think this is going to be a bigger deal than the eastbound work that we have done for the past year. I think this new westbound work is going to create much more difficulty. We'll talk about that. West Virginia's Attorney General Morrissey is leading Republican attorneys general around the country in warning the Biden administration do not engage in federal overreach. Attorney General Morrissey is always good about warning people, especially people outside his own state. Some Ohio lawmakers, as well as President Biden, suggesting a $15 per hour minimum wage. We'll talk about that. The Mountain State gets an F in the American Lung Association's latest tobacco report card. We've got folks from the American Lung Association coming in just a little bit. Governor Justice appoints a replacement for resigned Delegate Derek Evans, but the list he used was not the list given by the county committee where Evans was. And that's creating some controversy. We'll get into that. And questions and suggestions are continuing over this $25 million loan program in West Virginia involving venture capital firms. And we're going to talk about that right now with the host of Statewide Talk Line, Hoppy Kercheval. Good morning, Mr. Kercheval.
Good morning, Howard. How are you?
I'm good. I'm much better today. Audience knows we had a gas leak in our house a couple of nights ago. Gas company came, turned the heat off for 2 days.
Oh my!
Yes, so it was.
It
was a frigid couple of nights that we had to deal with, but we got it fixed, so I'm feeling better now. But
wow, so you just stuck it out and bundled up?
Yeah, my son and daughter-in-law said come down here, and I actually have another piece of property that is not rented or anything yet, and it has heat and stuff, and we could have gone and stayed there. But my wife and I, we just gathered in the living room. We had a couple of space heaters and big fluffy blankets, and we stayed warm that way. It was kind of like camping out, you know?
Yeah, good for you.
It was fun.
All right.
Now, 2 days was adequate.
Yeah, now you're ready for the heat to be back on. Yeah.
And I have been saying, and I do want to say this again, because every time I bring that up, it's people. Yes, all I just said is true, and it really, you realize, oh my God, how cold it can get and so on. I am always reminded that I still had fluffy blankets and space heaters and a house in which to be.
Yeah.
And it does, every time I get unusually cold or something like that, it reminds me that there are people who literally live in that and don't have fluffy blankets and don't have space heaters and don't have a home in which to be. And it perpetually helps me keep things in perspective,
Yeah, absolutely. Howard, growing up, our home where I grew up, at least the first 12 years of my life, we had a coal stove. And it was kind of like an apartment. So it was a coal stove, and then there was on the second floor where we lived, there was a heat register. It was steel, and it was about 3 feet square. So you'd wake up in the morning, and it'd be cold, really cold. And then my mother and my dad would go down and they'd get the coal fired up and burning. And that, in the wintertime, and that register would become, you could see the heat waves coming up out of it. And so you go there to get dressed for school, and you could get near it, but you could not step on it. And when we came in from outside, playing in the snow or working in the snow, and you'd take off your clothes and put them on the heat register, and you hear them sizzle. And they dry in about 10 minutes.
Some of my fondest childhood memories, and we didn't have the coal scuttle, but some of my fondest childhood memories are coming in from the cold and curling up on the register of the heater, and just getting warm. But like I said, what it does, though, a little bout of having to deal with a little bit of cold yesterday, my wife and I, it does remind me that there are people who live in this, and how lucky we are, But my son always says, Dad, it's a first world problem to say, do I go to my son's house or our spare house? It's a
you're
first
right.
world problem.
Exactly. I hear that a lot, too. My wife and I talk about that. Well, that's a first world problem. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And most of my problems are first world problems. So
As are mine.
Yeah. So, I will complain. I always complain because that's in our nature. But on the other hand, it's not a bad life.
No, it's pretty good.
I wanted to talk. Yeah. Listen, I say that all the time, and people get mad at me or something. I don't know. I've been totally off subject. I have been saying, for example, that I'm with Senator Manchin on the COVID relief money. I don't think we should be handing out checks to everybody.
I agree.
I think we should hand out checks to everybody who needs it, everybody who's been impacted by COVID. But my wife and I got, the first round of COVID relief, $1,200 each. I think we got $2,400. Now we got $1,200 this last time. I don't need it. I mean, I don't want to sound smarmy, but I don't need it. I gave it to the church.
Oh, wow.
It's a nice thing to do, but I don't need it to live my daily life. And then people make fun of me. Oh, yeah, Monroe, you don't need the money. Some people need it. I know some people need it, and they should get it. But those of us who don't, there's no need to send me a check.
Well,
or you a check copy.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you, and I think that they ought to lower because for two reasons. One is we don't have an infinite checkbook, Nash. We act like it, but we don't. And somebody's going to have to pay for that at some point, and every additional burden we add to the debt is a higher interest payment that we have to make annually on the debt. So we shouldn't just treat the Treasury like this unending checkbook, number one. And number two is, okay, let's in fact narrow this down to people who are truly needy, as opposed to those who are able to pay their bills and didn't lose their jobs during the pandemic. So I think you can lower that threshold.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, it goes back to, I got a pretty good life. It's silly to send me free money when I don't need free money. Yeah. Now, mind you, I like getting free money. But
yeah, I did too. I mean, we got a check, and I was not as generous as you. I didn't give it to the church, so props to you. But I thought, well, that's nice. That's like a windfall. I'm not going to send it back. But I think, well, I don't know. Why me?
Yeah, exactly. So what's that, 2,400? So my wife and I have gotten, 3,600 here in the last, since they've begun doing this. Nice, glad to get it, but don't need it. I want to shift gears though, Hoppy. I want to talk about this EDA program. I've always thought that one of the things we need in West Virginia is more venture capital. I'm a big believer in the entrepreneurial spirit. I'm a big believer that a lot of our future comes from entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs get their funding to a large extent from venture capital. So I like the idea of somehow the state being involved in venture capital. But let's talk about this audit that was done, and we've discussed. I didn't even realize we had been involved in this venture capital loan deal for quite a few years, and it looks like it's turned out to be a mess, right?
Yeah, I think it is. And As you say, Howard, there is a lot to be said for venture capital money that goes towards startups and emerging companies that can, in fact, can potentially produce amazing results. At one time, Apple was a startup company, right? So there is that. And also, you like the idea, I think, of investing in companies that are emerging or opening or entrepreneurships in West Virginia. So I get the concept, which was what was behind the decision by then Governor Wise and the legislature in 2002. But the general rule about this kind of investment is only put in money you can afford to lose. And so this $25 million was loaned by the state to the Economic Development Authority, and the EDA then in turn put that money into 7 venture capital firms, which in turn then loaned the money to startups in West Virginia, well, mostly in West Virginia. And now, 20 years later, the legislative auditor has looked at it and said, well, we lost almost $25 million. Only about $600,000 in principal was paid back, and the rest of it was simply lost. And there's not a real good, if you read that audit, there's not a real good accounting of, okay, well, where exactly did it go? I mean, it was invested in companies, but which companies? How were the decisions made to pick these companies? Were some successful and some weren't? And $8 million of the $25 million went to companies that made no investment in West Virginia. So there you have essentially $25 million, a roll of the dice and nothing in return.
And there are some questions about some pretty sloppy record keeping along the way as well, correct?
Yes, there are. When the legislative auditor, which by the way is separate from the state auditor, but the legislative auditor did their report, it was incomplete because the records are incomplete. When they reached out to the EDA and the Economic Development Authority turned over records and information, and there's 2 years that just nobody knows where they are. They're missing, or they weren't done, or they can't find them, or whatever. So that makes a thorough review of this even harder to complete. But I think, and former Governor Bob Wise is going to be on the program tomorrow and talk about it. And I don't want to just be that guy. I mean, I get the idea, and it was part of this whole economic development package in 2002, which came under the argument of let's try something, let's do something, let's try to help businesses in West Virginia. But Howard, as I like to say, and I think it's the government is not very good at picking economic winners and losers. And in this instance, it looks like they picked a lot of losers, and I think this raises two larger questions. One is what is the best way to use the public's money if you're going to invest in economic development? And two, if you're going to do it, certainly you need better accounting for how the money's spent.
But investing in venture capital firms, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be, West Virginia wasn't trying to be a venture capital firm. We weren't trying to seek out entrepreneurs and pick who we thought was a good startup. We were investing in companies, the idea at least, was to invest in companies that do that. They are the ones who identify potential startups and so on. And we simply help them with additional seed capital. That was kind of the concept. So it isn't as if we were trying to pick winners and losers, at least of businesses. We were trying to get venture capital companies to maybe invest more in the state. Were there any restrictions on, and you'll probably have more about this when we talk with Governor Wise tomorrow, but were there any restrictions on, venture capital company XYZ, in order for us to give you money, you must invest in West Virginia?
Well, there were, according to the audit, the guidelines in the legislation of how this was to be done were not specific enough. There were some parameters about the goals, which were to create economic development, create or perpetuate jobs in West Virginia, but apparently there were not very specific reporting requirements, or if there were, they weren't followed very closely. So the audit recommends if you're going to do this again, you really need to tighten it up significantly. The new state treasurer, Riley Moore, has already proposed legislation to do just that. Because, and this gets complicated, but the money flows through the treasurer, and then the treasurer allocates the funds to the Economic Development Authority, which then spends the funds. But the treasurer's office didn't have any jurisdiction on how the money was spent, or they couldn't say, well, we're not going to give you the money. So this legislation, which Riley Moore is proposing, would call for a better accounting and would say that, okay, if you're going to give money to the EDA, which it does, then there has to be quarterly reports, for example, of how the money's being spent and, what the returns. I mean, normal accounting procedures.
Part of this sounds to me, and again, you followed it closer than I have, part of this sounds to me like, let's call it a good idea. Maybe it wasn't, but a good idea that just kind of got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because, Howard, I bet you were around, I was around when this was done, and you cover it, and I probably covered it in this positive way, like, oh, here's something, and then you frankly forget about it. And you just do. Now, George Homan, who is retired now, but he worked for the Daily Mail, and he did some good reporting on this back in 2011, saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? And it sort of popped up in the news a decade ago, and I think we might have covered it then, and I might have talked to Homan then, I don't specifically recall. And then you just sort of forget about it, frankly. And that's what happens. And so, I mean, we didn't follow up. So
right, it just tends to get lost in the and apparently it got lost in the shuffle of government too. Somebody must have been somewhere was kind of aware of what was still going on, but it wasn't in any kind of a regular. I gather not a regular report, or it wasn't being tracked on a regular basis. It was just there. Yeah, and Riley Moore, I think, made a good point about this, is the Treasurer's office, since the money passes through the Treasurer's office. And I know that former Treasurer John Perdue had made inquiries to try to find out, saying, what's going on here? Can we get some way to clear the books on this? And I think that prompted the legislative audit. But certainly you would like to have the Treasurer's office, or I think the Treasurer's office is appropriate because the money flows through there, through a board. There's an investment board that operates within the Treasurer's office, to have them, in quarterly meetings say, okay, let's look. What are the numbers on this? What are the numbers on this? And if there's a red flag, then you can address it. But the red flag didn't come up for 20 years. There is no suggestion of any shady dealings here, right? I mean, this is more I don't want to say mismanagement, lack of oversight. This is more just a bit of a boondoggle, not some kind of a scandal. Am I right about that?
There in the audit, and I'll just refer to the audit, which is a pretty easy read, and people can access it in our story about it. There is no suggestion in the audit of any wrongdoing.
So it's just an idea that maybe was good, maybe was bad. It was implemented, kind of forgotten. Bookkeeping was shoddy. Now, these years after the fact, we're discovering it didn't really achieve its total purpose. That's something I've never understood. And it's true at the federal level, state level.
That's what the
every
audit
piece
says.
of legislation have some kind of
what the audit says, and I think anything beyond that is, I can speculate, but it would not be fair to speculate about any wrongdoing, because that simply is not, there's no evidence of that in the audit.
Do you, in your mind, think there could be? I'm gathering.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that. As the late Don Marsh used to say, Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is the most logical. And I would imagine, I will give this program, according to the audit, the benefit of the doubt. Here's something that some people thought was a good idea, and maybe it was a decent idea at the time, but it didn't work out. And as a result, you lose $25 million, which if you had kept in the state investment pool over that 20 years, with an average return of 7%, it would today be about $100 million.
Well, there's something to think about.
Which would come in handy. So
There's something to think about.
And I know that's kind of Monday morning quarterbacking, but I do think it raises this question. And one of the challenges economically in West Virginia is not having venture capital. Now, venture capital often comes from the private sector, right? And in this case, the state was trying to get in on it, and I don't
But
know.
again, what we were trying to do was to provide money to private venture capital firms. It isn't like we were trying to be a venture capital firm. It wasn't like we were trying to identify businesses. Maybe we should. I don't know. I'm not as adamant as you are about never identifying winners and losers, but it is a dicey thing. Of course, the flip side of it is that now we're looking at $25 million squandered, not a lot achieved for it. Had one of these venture capital firms discovered the next Apple, we'd be saying, man, wasn't that a great investment?
Well, you would, Howard. And if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, what a Merry Christmas we all would have. I mean, the general rule is don't put money in you can afford to lose. For every Apple, what are there? 1,000, 10,000 Kirchhoff and Monroe enterprises.
Only a fool would invest in that. I'll tell you that right now. Well, yes. On the other hand, that's what venture capital is. That's what the concept of venture capital is all about. Risks that you wouldn't normally take, and we do. At least I do. I want the state to think outside the box in terms of economic development. I mean, we have a handful of what we consider economic development tools. 90% of them are cut taxes. Well, I mean, let's be honest about it. Let's give money to a company to build something or give them a tax break. This was at least an effort made to try to think outside the box and do something different. And I don't want to diss the whole concept. I'm really more concerned that it just kind of got lost in the shuffle. I think if it had been maybe followed through on, it might have been better.
Yeah, the lost in the shuffle is a great way to put it, and I think that does raise the alarm bells about how we're supposed to follow these things. Also, West Virginia economically has a chicken or the egg problem, and that is you do need venture capital. You do need money that can be invested in frankly, high-risk endeavors to spawn new businesses and entrepreneurship. Typically, that comes, though, from the private sector, so you need people with wealth. Well, guess what? We don't have that many people with wealth, so you don't have as much money. You do have some people like Brad Smith is putting some money into West Virginia. He's the Marshall grad who was the head of Intuit for a number of years, and he's very wealthy. He's putting some money in West Virginia. And then you try to utilize the universities and the colleges and their research and development, and you try to partner up there and try to make some things happen. I just think that, generally speaking, government is better at the infrastructure part. Okay, let's get the broadband in here. Let's get the roads in here. Let's support the colleges and universities that have the brain power. Let's do those kinds of things, which government does pretty well, much better than the private sector, and then let the private sector do best what it does best.
Yeah, I'm not in total disagreement, but again, I think sometimes we have to kind of think differently too. We've got to think outside the box. I've said that about 4 times. I hate to repeat the phrases, but yeah, I think we have to think outside the box sometimes, and I don't know that we, especially in West Virginia, that we always do. But
I don't think, Howard,
this is a good example of why.
Let me argue with you. You actually don't need to think outside the box in this instance. The box is already there, and the box is private investment in risk-taking does work, and government's funding of infrastructure does work. So that box is pretty good. So can we just do the box better?
Well, I guess.
Or can we just move away from the whole box analogy?
Well, I hear what you're saying, but how do we get? You can build the best. I mean, is that enough? Build good roads and ancillary things. And then hopefully they will come, build it, they will come. Doesn't it require some additional kind of incentives or activity to try and bring newer types of businesses in?
Well,
or do we keep on doing the same thing we've done forever? Build roads and give tax breaks.
I would argue we haven't done all the right things. I mean, I would say you build the roads and the modern roads, that is broadband, and you have a competitive tax structure. I'm not talking about just lowering everybody's taxes. I'm talking about a competitive, modern tax structure, and you try to do the kinds of things that the government can do that benefit quality of life. And then, I think that investment will follow that. I hope. I mean, I think that's if we're talking about, I think that's a better bet than just taking the taxpayer money and rolling the dice on risky investment.
I hear you, and again, I don't totally disagree, but I think sometimes maybe we have to roll the dice a little bit. But that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that.
Yes, we can.
At least you and I agree to disagreeably. Hey, I got to ask you a personal question.
Yes, sir. Sure.
I've been noticing. Are you getting a little frustrated sometimes? Some of your callers.
Yes. And this is a struggle, Howard. You've been a host longer than I have, and I understand that I don't have a job without my audience, and I appreciate that, and I respect the audience. This whole deal with Trump and what I believe was inciting of the mob, and I've written about it and I've talked about it, has caused a lot of consternation with some members of the audience, and I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry that is the case, but if somebody calls in and says the election was stolen and read Trump's speech, he didn't incite the mob, I can't. I have to argue back on that. I can't just sit there and go, well, that's another opinion, and we value all opinion. I can't do that because the election wasn't stolen, and Donald Trump wasn't robbed. And he did through his actions by spreading false conspiracy theories, by his actions in that speech, the day of the mob, by his attempt to get his own vice president to violate the Constitution, and then when Pence wouldn't do it, to throw Pence under the bus. All of that to me is egregious, and there needs to be accountability for that. And how am I to meet? I really try hard to meet people on a common ground, but I don't know where else to go on that, frankly.
I could really sense the frustration that you have sometimes lately. And I do too, by the way. I have purged some of my social media of people, I explained it in my social media accounts. If you are going to persist in talking about the election was stolen, if you're going to persist in using phrases like the Biden crime family, there are just some key phrases there that I'm getting you off my page. I can't accept it anymore. I can't treat it as if it's a legitimate other point of view.
Well,
I always...
One of the criticisms that I've been getting is that and not by everybody, but by people who are, and I understand that 69% of West Virginians who voted for Donald Trump, and that all those people are deeply disappointed Trump didn't win. So I get that. I mean, I've had candidates that I wanted to win that lost, so I understand that. I understand being disappointed. What I do not understand is sticking with a narrative that is patently false, and
right.
That's you have to make a stand somewhere on those kinds of things. And candidly, bluntly, I think I'm on the right side of history here, but not everybody agrees, and I understand it. And I think we can disagree agreeably, but when someone says, wow, you cut him off because his opinion was that the Dominion machines changed the outcome of the election, I'm going to say, no, that's wrong. That didn't happen. So I can't sit there and say, well, that's an interesting point. That's something to consider. No, that didn't happen. So that's why
I knew you were in trouble when Mike Azinger called you a liberal. That's when I knew you were in trouble.
Well, and on that, Howard, is the knee-jerk criticism is, oh, Hoppy, you've become a liberal. Howard, I think you can speak to that, but I mean, I haven't become anything. I'm the same place I always was. And I don't think, if you're calling out bad behavior, I don't think that is a liberal or conservative position. And so
I would agree. Yeah.
That's, I'm not calling out what happened because I'm a liberal.
To me, that was the moment when I knew things were a little bit askew in Kirchhoff land. When I heard Azinger say, "Well, Hoppy, you're a liberal. Liberals like you." It's like, holy crap! If Hoppy's a liberal, what the hell am I?
I don't know. I mean, what can I say?
I'm with you, pal. I feel your pain. I feel your pain when I hear some of those calls, and I know that you just want to go, "Oh, geez, please, no." I feel your pain. Believe me.
Well, I truly do, and not to sound defensive. I truly want to treat everyone with respect, but respect is a two-way street. And if you're going to call me a liberal or perpetuate something that simply isn't true, then we're not on a plane of respect.
Right. And yeah, exactly. I was filling in for you one time years ago, Hop, and someone called and said, "Well, I'm going to tell you what, you're nothing but a communist." And I remember saying, because I caught him unawares, I said, "Okay." Because it was like, that defanged them. It was like, okay, that's fine. If that's what you want to call me, that's okay. And I could hear it in the other person's voice, like, "Well, what do I do now?" He said, "Okay" to that. So.
Well, I mean,
what do you got coming up today?
What are we doing? Well, you're going to have General Hoyer on again. I think this, the rollout of the vaccine continues to be a gigantic story. Speaking of liberal versus conservative, as you might expect, we're going to talk about these pretty dramatic steps by the Biden administration on climate. Yeah. So, and yesterday I watched the press conference with Gina McCarthy, who was the head of the EPA under Barack Obama, and John Kerry, and I thought, okay, Howard, here we go, back to the future. So there go by my liberal credentials. So we're gonna talk about that. Also, a little history, and I think you like history, is we have Ray Smock on, and he was the former director of the Robert C. Byrd Center at Shepherd University, and he's soon going to be the interim director. In that, I want to talk about the filibuster. What was one of the most famous filibusters that ever occurred? And this is back when you had to speak in a filibuster. You couldn't just say you're invoking the filibuster, right? You had to speak to filibuster. One of the most famous ones was against the Civil Rights Act. By Lyndon Johnson, and who was one of the principal speakers for the filibuster against the Civil Rights Act?
Robert Byrd.
Yes, sir. So we'll do a little history lesson this morning. How about that?
Yeah, I've often thought, real quick on that filibuster, I have argued, if you want to keep the filibuster, let's go back to, if you're going to filibuster, you have to actually filibuster.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean, if you're going to have a filibuster, don't just say, well, we can't get past the 60 vote threshold, so they're going to filibuster. No, if you want to filibuster, okay, go filibuster. Yeah. Stand up there and talk as long as you want. And my argument would be then, when you're done, we'll get back to our regular business.
Yeah, that would be good.
To me, that makes sense. All right, I got to run.
All right, man.
My talk line coming up today at 10. And I keep asking, things that are in my head I keep wanting to talk to you about. Has Steyerwalt ever explained what happened to him?
Well, he hasn't. Because I think he has a confidentiality agreement in his firing. Because it's not just, you're gone, and I'm sure he has some sort of settlement that has within it a confidentiality agreement that you don't speak to it. The New York Times has reported, quoting sources, that the house cleaning that was done, and prominently Steyerwalt in there, was linked to Fox trying to get beyond calling Arizona for Biden on election night. And Fox's attempt to reestablish its right credentials.
And you got to say one thing for Chris, both this year and actually 4 years ago as well, there was some real strong arming done to try and get him to change the election desk decisions. And he was really pretty good about saying, no, I think we got everything right here. So,
Well, what's interesting about that is, boy, I can't believe they called the election and, they called it too soon. Well, they were right. I mean, they nailed it.
Exactly.
So what's
Correct.
the complaint exactly?
Right.
But
Right.
so it goes. Steiwald's a very talented guy. He'll land on his feet. He'll do better than you or I combined, Howard.
I don't doubt that. All right, Hop, good talking to you. Thanks for spending so much time with us, and we'll talk again soon.
Howard, my pleasure as always. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
All right, Hoppy Kirchhoff. Statewide Talk Line comes up at 10:06 this morning here on the Watchdog. Man, I spent a lot of time with him, Biff.
Yeah, you kind of did, but there was a lot you had to get to.
Well, there was something, some of the stuff I wanted to catch up on. I haven't had a chance to talk to him for a while. So, all right, quarter before the hour. I got barely time to get some headlines in here and a few other odds and ends before I have to hit the top of the hour break. So let's go to the news desk of the Big Seven, and we'll check some sports and all that kind of good stuff, and then a few other odds and ends before I turn things over to ABC at 9 o'clock.
The WTRF Channel 7 News Update is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
Now,
All right, back in a minute, Biffy. All right, I'm back, Biff.
in the 1960s, twice at the old Charleston Civic Center and once in the new Charleston Civic Center. That was 2002 when John Beeline posted his first major victory as West Virginia's coach. Joe Harebear's late three-pointer helped stun the 8th-rated Gators by a final of 68-66 in a game which featured the homecoming of St. Albans standout Brett Nelson. Florida has won 6 of the 9 encounters in this series and 3 in a row. That is today's Mountaineer Report. It's brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics. I'm Tony Caridi on the Mountaineer Sports Network from Learfield, IMG College.
Hello, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster with a look at your local weather forecast for your Thursday. Mostly cloudy skies, a couple of flurries, daytime high near 25. 18 degrees for the overnight low under mainly cloudy conditions. You'll see clouds and limited sunshine for your Friday, with temperatures in the mid-20s. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From the Watchdog, I'm Darnell Foster.
You can now watch the Legislative Watchdogs every Wednesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. on Facebook Live. Talk radio taken to the next level. Only on the Watchdog. Give us a call and tell us what you're thinking. Locally, 304-214-1600. Out of the area, toll free, 866-514-1600 or 304-232-TALK.
Miss a part of the show? Want to hear a segment again? Check out our podcast page at watchdognetwork.com. The Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe continues.
22 degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. Little wind whipping around about 9 miles an hour makes it feel like 12 degrees. 22 at the airport and a little bit of light snow coming down around the upper Ohio Valley. 22 at the airport, 22 at my home studios, 22 at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Biff, I just game plans never seem to work out the way I want to. I was in outlining the show today. I purposely left what I thought was going to be a lot of time for just you and I and the audience to talk about a number of different subjects, and I got 3 pages worth of things to talk about here today, and we've gotten to almost nothing. We had Mark Ackerman on earlier talking about the 8,000 calls a minute that they got yesterday for their COVID vaccine appointment phone lines. And Hoppy and I took a lot longer than I thought we would, but that was okay because it was kind of fun. It was fun talking to Hop, get a kick out of that. So I didn't get to a lot of things. Wheeling Hospital's plans for construction, and Morrissey is at it again in West Virginia, and the minimum wage, and they're talking about censure versus conviction now in the Senate with the impeachment business. Didn't get to much of any of that. Maybe next hour we will do some of that. I do want to remind you that the big game is only a week or so away. Celebrate the 55th edition of the big game. We all know what we're talking about, right? We can't say the words because the NFL gets all upset. If we say the words, we get in trouble. But the big game, number 55, coming up in just a couple of weeks, and you can get exclusive 55-1 odds if you do your betting on FanDuel Sportsbook. If you've never tried FanDuel before, right now, new users can bet on either team and get 55-1 odds when they play in the big game. That's right, bet 5. You could win 275 if you pick the winner of the big game on February 7th. Who are you picking, Bippy? Are you picking yet?
Yes, I am going to go with Kansas City in a close one.
I know you've been saying you think it's pretty close, going to be a good game and a close game. What do you think gives KC the edge?
I think Mahomes at quarterback, even though he's going against Brady, and I think he's got a little bit more weapons that he can go to in receivers, and I just think they'll cancel out what Tampa Bay has. I know Tampa Bay's got some receivers and everything as well, but I just think Kansas City has a little bit more that's going to put them over the top.
And so with Mahomes and Brady, the matchup there, you're going with youth versus experience.
Yes, I'm going to go with youth over experience, even though this is a home game for Tampa Bay.
All right, so Biffy's putting his cash down on Kansas City. You can bet however you like and get 55-1 odds using FanDuel right now. FanDuel is easy to use. They have very fast withdrawals, all kinds of odds boosts and specials. And all you have to do, first of all, is download it. If you haven't done it yet, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Use my name, Monroe, in the promo code box. That way, they will know that you heard about it here on the Watchdog Morning Show, and then you can start using it. FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code Monroe. Now, you must be 21 or older. You must be physically present in West Virginia or Pennsylvania. It is for new users only. You must wager on designated boost markets. There is deposit required, and the maximum bonus is $275. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Remember, have fun and enjoy gaming using FanDuel. But if you cannot gamble and have fun, if it's a serious business for you and you end up getting deep in debt, don't do FanDuel. Instead, call 1-800-GAMBLER. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or online at www.1800gambler.net. The big game is coming up. What do we got? We have something called tonight, Biffy. Is tonight I don't have my schedule in front of me. Tonight a WVU night. What do we have tonight? Anything?
We have let's see, according to the schedule in front of me, the Penguins at the Bruins tonight at 7 o'clock.
Okay, all right.
And then...
So Biffy, what's the story with the Penguins now?
They've, you talking about Jim Rutherford or the...
Yeah, what's this? I mean,
team
I
in
heard the
general?
headline, but I still have never really heard what exactly is going on there.
Yeah, basically, from what I've heard, it's just, and I don't know what the personal reasons are, but that was the main reason for Jim Rutherford stepping down. He cited personal reasons. I think he's 70 or might be a little older than 70, but yeah, he just cited personal reasons for stepping down, and the Penguins have hired an interim GM at the time until they find somebody else. But it was kind of odd yesterday, just out of nowhere.
Well, it really came out
seeing
of the
it.
blue, right? I mean,
Yeah.
no indication of anything, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's gone.
Yeah, that was I got the alert on my phone, and it was like, man, I didn't know anything was wrong with him, or hadn't heard anything else, but yeah, I mean, just kind of took everybody by surprise yesterday, I think.
So have you heard rumblings? I mean, again, I've seen nothing official. Are we guessing a health-related issue, or just kind of got tired and said, I'm 70, I'm done? Or is there trouble in his background? I don't have any sense of this at all. I tried to follow it a bit, and I can't get my head around what exactly is happening there.
Any time you see personal reasons, and this is just me thinking here, maybe he wanted to spend more time with the family.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's always that. Maybe he does have a health issue that we don't know about, that he didn't want anybody to know. I don't know. Those would be my two best guesses.
Yeah. Probably at some point we might get a better idea, and it could be as simple, although again, you would think he would give notice of some kind, or, you'd hear some rumblings about it first. But it could be as simple as, I'm 70, all of a sudden it strikes me, you know what? I need to spend some time at home. I get that. I mean, I keep saying over and over again, I'm going to, do this show forever. I'm going to die in the chair here. When I'm done, they'll stuff me and play old tapes. And today, that's my thought.
Or maybe...
But you know what? Tomorrow, I may say, the hell with it.
Maybe he
I'd
thought
rather stay home and play with Teddy.
I've done all that I could, and that's it, and now's the right time to step away.
Yeah, and I think that's very, very possible. 9 o'clock here on the Watchdog Morning Show. ABC covers the world. That is for us next. Then we're going to talk a bit about the American Lung Association's tobacco report card, which we in West Virginia got a big old whopping F. We had a couple of D's, but overall an F. We'll talk about it next Watchdog Show.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
The ABC News is brought to you by Thomas Auto Centers, Mall Road, St. Clairsville. Get the best deal at Thomas Auto Centers.
I'm Sherry.
All right, Biffy, we'll see if Molly calls us. Like I said, I just am not sure. I couldn't tell. If we don't hear from her shortly after 9:10, give her a call at the number I sent you. Yeah, something like that. That's fine. Pisiatano, 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 Pisiatano.